Britain might have been the first to violate American neutral rights during World War I, but Germany is the second and much more serious. You see, Germany could never fight against the British when it came to its navy. All right, the German Navy, it was being built up on the run up to World War One to challenge the British Navy, but the British Navy was just way too big. So the Germans used submarines to attack shipping around the British Isles. Now, when it comes to fighting on the sea between an unarmed ship and an armed vessel, there are rules. For example, if you're a captain of a ship that's going to fire upon an unarmed vessel, you first have to warn that vessel, and then take the crew and put it on your ship to accommodate the crew of that ship. That's the rules, right? Well, the Germans are not going to do this. They're going to be using submarines. And think about a submarine. What's its biggest asset? Stealth, right? It's hard to detect. So what is a submarine supposed to do? Surface and tell the ship that they're about to attack, guess what? We're attacking you. The second thing is they're supposed to take that crew and put it on their ships, right? Onto the submarine, right? Well, World War I submarines, heck, even today's submarines, can barely contain its own crew, much less the crew of an entire commercial liner, right? So a submarine, by its very nature, cannot fight according to these rules. Now, there's going to be, this is going to be during a time period that, it's going to be very difficult to distinguish a commercial vessel with a warship, right? And in fact, it raised the possibility that an American commercial vessel might be sunk by accident. Not only that, Americans traveled on foreign ships. Well, we might think that is a violation of our neutral rights. So Wilson made the announcement in 1915 that Germany would be held to, quote unquote, strict accountability for any loss of American lives and goods aboard non-warships belonging to countries at war. Right? Basically, Wilson's saying, you know what? If you torpedo a British ship and it happens to have an American on it, we're going to hold you accountable for it. I mean, it's kind of hot pie in the sky type of thing. How in the world is a U-boat captain in the German Navy going to know that on a British ship there's Americans on it? They're not. In the first place, you have to understand is that when you put yourself under the flag of another country, aren't you, even today, under the partial responsibility of that country? Yes, but Wilson is going to said the fact that Americans on board on foreign ships are protected by American neutrality. Wilson had told the British that they violated our rights and that damages would be collected at a later date, i.e., nothing was done. Here he has taken a completely different track, strict accountability, threatening a break in diplomatic relations and war. He never gave the Germans the same freedom to violate our neutral rights that he gave Great Britain. Now, what's the difference between the German and British violations, of course? Human life. The German violations could cost lives. That's a very moralistic outlook. Wilson had begun as a legalist, and now we're talking about a moralist. Now, Wilson took this stand, and then in the spring of 1915, a German submarine sinks a British passenger liner known as the Lusitania. On board were 1,200 people who perished. 120 of these 1,200 people were Americans. Now, the Lusitania did have some weapons on board in the hold, so this made it actually a legitimate target. But of course, it's going to infuriate the American public. But what Wilson did was he said he's not going to go to war right now, but he's going to send a series of notes, one stronger than the other. Basically said that you have to stop this unrestricted submarine warfare, or the United States will break diplomatic relations with you. What do you think comes next? War, right? Now, the Secretary of State at the time, William Jennings Bryan, knows what this is going to mean. And he even resigns his post rather than deliver these notes. Bryan's position was that by sending this message and taking this position, it did not leave much wiggle room when it came to German alternatives, should Germany continue in terms of unrestricted submarine warfare. Bryan instead wanted to tell the public that if they chose to get on a vessel of another country that they are based other than the United States flag, they are taking their risk and they will be held responsible for it. Sail at your own risk kind of thing. Bryan says where Wilson's presidency is taking us. War. Now, after the third notice sent by Wilson, the Germans gave what's known as the Liner Pledge. Basically said that they would not attack any unarmed passenger liner in violation of the rules. It looks like a major victory for Wilson, but here's the problem. Passenger liners and merchant ships look very similar back then. What happened then was that by the time you get to the spring of 1916, a French ship called the Sussex was torpedoed. But apparently, the profile of that ship was very close to that of a merchant ship torpedoed by the Germans. Something like 50 people died, no Americans. Wilson demanded that unrestricted submarine warfare be gone and done by the Germans. The Germans agreed to it in the May of 1916 in what we call the Sussex Pledge. Essentially what it said was that Germany would not attack unarmed merchant or passenger ships in violation of the rules. Therefore, what they're saying is, we're not going to use submarines anymore. Looks like another big victory for Wilson, right? Do you think the Germans did this and made this pledge because they thought Wilson was right? Of course not. They made this pledge to make sure that the United States did not come in on the Allied side. It's a military decision to keep the United States out of the war. It's all it was. Now stop and think about this for a minute. If the Germans gave this pledge for that reason that I just related to you, suppose in the future they decide to basically go in at all costs. They're going to win no matter what. And they're going to pull out all the stops. They're going to put all the chips on the table. What are they likely going to do? They're going to go back and use unrestricted submarine warfare. What would cause is that the United States would have to do after all these series of threats that they're making, they would have to go and take action against it because we threatened in such a manner. I.e., basically what we did is we placed the American decision to go to war in the hands of a trigger-happy U-boat captain. So basically, when it comes to our foreign policy, remember we talked about moralistic and realistic foreign policies? We start as a legalist, and then we go into a moralist type of policy. And we go to war because we're going to go to rules, we're going by the rules, and be right at all the same time. This is not a position to be put yourself into, right? It looked like the victories of Wilson, but not after you look deeply into it and realize that Wilson's policies actually guarantee war rather than avoid it.